All right. Hello. Good morning or good afternoon, depending where you are. My name is Tom Ulanowski. I'm the chair of the C45 Quality Association, and I'm very happy to once again bring you another fantastic webinar. Before we begin and introduce our moderator and panelists for today's event, as always, I'm going to spend a few minutes introducing our association, what we do, and why we do it. The C45 Quality Association, as many of you probably know by now, is an industry association here in Canada that represents people working directly in the cannabis sector, typically related to quality testing and regulatory professions. We are unique in this industry in that we are a membership-backed organization. So we're not corporate-backed. We represent people and the people working in the industry rather than corporations themselves. And we are also a federal non-for-profit. We were started a number of years ago by industry professionals. We've been about 100 members thereabouts for the last few years. And ultimately, what we do is try to be a unified voice of quality lab and regulatory professionals in this industry. How we kind of go about our business is we typically like to put on public and member-only events such as this, where we discuss the latest and greatest topics and issues in the sector. And we kind of try to do that in a monthly cadence. So keep an eye out for events in 2024. We're just planning one in January with I believe McGill, talking about some of the research efforts, and more announcements related to those shortly. We also, in the past, have held in-person summits and events. Obviously, COVID has changed the dynamics for the last few years, but we are actually sitting down today as an association. Our board is sitting down to discuss bringing that back in June of 2024, somewhere in the GTA or Ontario. So again, more announcements about that shortly, but we're looking forward to engaging with our members and the industry at large in person this coming year. So that's quite exciting. And of course, one of the most important things that we do, or I think that we do anyways, is we engage with regulators, namely Health Canada, but also the provinces, to inform them of the current issues and also potential solutions. And we typically meet with Health Canada multiple times a year. I think we're at meeting 5 or 6 this year. We either engage and discuss kind of very broadly kind of the feeling of the industry and as it relates to quality or testing, but also specific issues. Like, for example, this kind of edible extract issue that's been ongoing for the better part of the year. We've just sat down with Health Canada last week to kind of get an update on that, because I think our argument is the industry deserves some clarity and transparency. So if you want to know more about what we do, or if you want to join and become a member, please visit c45association.com. Memberships start at $49 for students, $99 for non-voting. It just helps us run our organization. We're all volunteers on the board. We do this out of the goodness of our heart, but we still have accounting, legal, and website fees to kind of manage. So every little bit helps. And I really encourage all of you listening here, if you've attended our presentations in the past and like what we do, please consider joining. It really does help us a lot and gives us a little bit more resources to do what we want to do. And you can also check out our upcoming events. We have quality time events. We have social events for our networks. And like I said, please be on the lookout for events starting in 2024 in January, much like this, where we're going to bring on a panel of experts to discuss whatever it is we're going to discuss. So thanks again for joining. A bit of housekeeping before I introduce our moderator today. Excuse me. We all should be aware that this webinar is being recorded, and we're going to post it to our YouTube channel in the coming days or weeks. So if you want to share this or reference it, it'll be online as well as our past archive. So please check out our YouTube channel if you want to see all of our previous events. We have plenty of time for Q&A after. So during the session, please use the Q&A feature on your Zoom to ask any questions, and at the end, myself and our moderator will kind of go through them chronologically. If we haven't covered that topic during the presentation, of course, we're going to try to get to it. So please start populating that as soon as possible. If there's any tech issues, use the chat box and we'll kind of sort them out as we go. And obviously, just a reminder, we haven't had issues with the past with this, but please be respectful. Please be courteous. Please keep your comments or questions positive. Thank you. Without further ado, I would like to now introduce the moderator, Dr. Andrian Rakoff. He's the lead of our analytical testing committee, but also the director of research and controlled substances at RPC, and the person responsible for bringing a panel of experts together here. So, Andrian, I'll hand it off to you. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Tom, and I'm very excited today for the wonderful lineup of presenters that we have, and kind of digging into a topic that we think is important to take a look at. And as the title kind of implies, we'll be looking at ISO accreditation in the cannabis industry and how it presents an opportunity for a path towards standardization. So just to run through all of the presenters that have joined us today, we have Dr. Diane Botelho, the Chief Executive Officer at RPC, which stands for the Research and Productivity Council. We're joined also by Daniel Charlong, the Lead Specialist of Technical Accreditation Services at the Standards Council of Canada, or SCC. We're also joined by Emma Gitej, the Business Development, Marketing, and Communications Manager for CALA, the Canadian Association for Laboratory Accreditation. And last but certainly not least, we've got Dr. Hussein El Aribi, the former Senior Director of Labs for Valens Sundial and the current board member for CALA. So we're going to kind of go through presenter by presenter. They're each going to kind of share their own kind of perspective on ISO accreditation, and as Tom mentioned, at the end of this, we'll have I think lots of opportunities for digging into some questions. So I'll ask our first speaker, Dr. Diane Botelho, to if you could please share your presentation.
Okay, you should be able to see my screen now. Excellent.
It's all over to you, Diane.
Wonderful. Thank you for the introduction, Andrian, and thank you to the C45 Association for putting this webinar together for us today. And thank you to all of you for tapping into this really important topic. So a little bit about who we are at RPC. As Andrian mentioned, RPC stands for the Research and Productivity Council. We were created in 1962 as a result of the Research and Productivity Act. And at that time, we were created as New Brunswick's very first research and technology organization. RPC is a not-for-profit Crown corporation, and our mandate is to service the science and engineering needs of industry and government. We were one of the first licensed labs in cannabis area in Canada. So we've actually been involved in cannabis science since the 1990s. So we don't just conduct cannabis operations at RPC. We actually have 6 business units that span across all areas that you can see on the infographic to the left. So from aquaculture and ocean technology to a lot of genomics and transcriptomics in the forestry industry. We really do span across all areas of regulatory testing, environmental testing, and much, much more. So we have organic chemistry, inorganic chemistry, bioanalytical chemistry, minerals and industrial services, engineering services, and research and controlled substances. And the bulk of our cannabis operations actually fall in our research and controlled substances group. So I like to share this infographic just to speak a little bit about our leadership in cannabis science. I had mentioned that we've been involved in this type of science since the 1990s. And this infographic displays all the areas that our scientists and engineers support the industry. So we currently work on a lot of genetics projects to help identify genes that will enhance potency of different cultivars. Our engineers are very busy with process development, optimization, extraction, testing of different processes. Our industrial hygiene group is often supporting the industry with testing needs. Our engineers are often working on automation projects, whether it's packaging or pre-rolls or anything that may be automated. We have a food chemistry division that's often supporting the needs in the food chemistry side. And of course, we have a large suite of analytical services that really fall in that regulated batch release testing category. Okay, so on to the topic of the day. What is ISO 17025, and why do I think that this would be a step towards standardizing the industry? Well, first of all, the 17025 standard is a standard that sets forth the general requirements for the competence of testing and calibration labs. So in most countries worldwide, the ISO 17025 standard is the standard for which labs must hold accreditation to be deemed technically competent. And so if we're going to bid on a tender for a project, one of the very first things that's in the tender is a requirement for 17025, or else we're not even able to bid. So mandating ISO 17025 accreditation for lab testing is really common in other industries, such as environmental and health and safety related testing. An example of that would be with the firefighting industry, where they require their breathing air to be tested using an ISO 17025 accredited lab. So why is standardization important? It allows you to compare apples to apples for lab results, and it also provides confidence in the accuracy of that result. So with 17025 requirements, our scientists must undergo routine proficiency testing, and this allows for us to identify outliers. It also mandates very stringent document management systems. So we have to have clearly defined standard operating procedures, training records, and analyst proficiency records. We also have to make sure that we're adhering to the standard by making sure that all the methods we use in the lab are validated and fit for purpose. And I'll explain what fit for purpose means in a couple of minutes. And the 17025 helps with standardization in a way that it removes ambiguity in the interpretation of any regulations that we're testing to. For example, the Health Canada regulations. So pesticides, we can take a look at that. Health Canada has very clear guidelines on what the list of pesticides is that we need to be testing to, as well as the detection limits that we need to meet for that testing. So that becomes something that's auditable under the 17025 requirements if the lab is 17025 accredited. So some really important clarifications. The first one is that accreditation is test specific. So what I mean by that is I often interact with clients across various industries that say, let's use aquaculture, for example. I did my fish health testing with an accredited lab. And we say, well, are they accredited for the test you used them for? And if they look at the scope of accreditation, they're like, oh, no, actually, they're accredited in food chemistry. Doesn't that mean the lab is accredited? No, it does not. It means they're accredited for those food chemistry tests that they're offering, but not specifically for the fish health diagnostics they're offering. So it's really important if you're seeking an accredited lab that you look for the specific tests that they're going to be doing for you and make sure that those are on their scope of accreditation. The ISO 17025 standard, this is another very important clarification. It does not mean all labs have to use the same analytical platforms. So many different labs can use different methods as long as those methods are valid. And if they're valid and fit for purpose, then we'll all produce the same results. So what do I mean by fit for purpose? I mean that we use NIST traceable standards. We use properly calibrated instruments and control our instrument records. That we have very clearly defined standard operating procedures, analyst proficiency records, and analyst proficiency training. It means that we're required to participate in external proficiency testing programs. And it means a lot more. The standard specifies QA and QC practices. We have to have an internal auditing program. We have to undergo external audits. We have to have a stringent CAPA program, which is a continuous and preventative action program. We have to conduct vendor qualifications for every substance that we purchase that is part of that test, and much, much more. And a note about the proficiency programs, because the ISO 17025 standard mandates that we have to participate in these programs, is a really great way to help capture data that is outside tolerance limits, and therefore will help you capture inaccurate results. And another thing about the standard is that if we as a lab, when we're accredited, have 2 consecutive unacceptable proficiency test results, that actually results in us having to report ourselves to our accrediting body and potential loss of accreditation for that test. So accreditation provides an additional voice to licensed producers. So the ISO 17025 standard mandates that we have a process for responding to complaints, and we have a way of stating, well, they state that the lab shall have a documented process to receive, evaluate, and make decisions on these complaints. And this process is audited by the accrediting body. So the accrediting body themselves also has the authority to investigate complaints. So for an example, if a licensed producer were to suspect that a lab was not producing accurate results, they could actually issue a complaint to the accrediting body that that lab is accredited with, and then that would initiate for. What is the advantage to the LP here? The advantage is that that takes some of the workload off Health Canada by helping to distribute those complaints and investigations across additional regulatory bodies, such as the Standards Council of Canada or CALA. So what does that ultimately mean for you? It means that you get a faster response to the concerns you have. An accredited requirement is absolutely to the advantage of the client. So the 17025 standard ensures that regulations are understood by the lab that's conducting the testing, and that they're followed. So for example, back to Health Canada requirements. We know that moisture correction is not permitted for testing for potency. So that is now something that is a standard as far as the accrediting body is concerned. So if the lab being used by the LP is ISO 17025 accredited and is suspected of not following these guidelines for moisture correction, then the accrediting body can investigate via the complaint process. It's really important to state that this complaint process or this investigation cannot occur if the lab is not ISO 17025 accredited. This is an example that I wanted to provide. It's not in the cannabis area, but it's in the medical testing area. But it was a study conducting that really showed how accreditation really helps to improve quality and move the industries towards standardization. So this is a study that was conducted on a medical testing lab in sub-Saharan Africa. And the investigators are really interested in answering 2 questions. Does accreditation impact the adherence to quality standards? And does accreditation decrease the severity of nonconformities? So this study investigated 2 things. It investigated the total number of nonconformities and also the severity of those pre and post accreditation. So in this graphic, you can see, so this lab, they were testing a lot of medical substances and devices. You can imagine how important that is to human life. In 2017 is when they became accredited to the 17025 standard. So here's some data from 2013 before they were accredited. You can see that they had some non-conformances in both the management areas and the technical requirements areas. Quite a significant amount, over 80 of them altogether. In 2017, when they went forward to attain the accreditation, that's of course, in order to obtain the 17025 accreditation, you go through a thorough external audit, and that brought down the number of non-conformances. But then you can see that in the following year, those nonconformances were still significantly lower. So it really highlighted the fact that adhering to this standard, having this external body to help you understand what requirements you need to meet, really did translate into safer practices in the lab and less nonconformances altogether. So if we take a little bit of a deeper look and look at the major nonconformances, now again, remember, this is a medical testing facility. The pre-accreditation nonconformances, both on the management side and the technical side, were overwhelming. And again, year of the audit that fell drastically, and then following the audit, they were improved compared to the pre-audit data. So most industries, as I stated earlier, require ISO 17025 accreditation before they'll even look to your lab for analysis. So the firefighting industry and the diving industry, they require accreditation for their breathing and diving air analysis. Pretty much any health and safety related testing requires accreditation. The medical gas testing realm, most environmental testing, and much, much more requires the 17025 accreditation, and this is worldwide. So just some final thoughts before I wrap up. The ISO 17025 standard ensures that lab practices and quality systems are standardized, and this helps provide a very high degree of confidence in the accuracy of the analytical result you are receiving. Although I want to say that's only just a part of the picture here. Lab standardization is just a piece. One would argue, and especially the scientists in the lab would say, across all industries, we see that one of the most critical factors is how the sample was collected to begin with, and that will influence your analytical result. So really, I see two pieces to really helping us move in the right direction. And those pieces are a standard method that we need to come up with as an industry for how to collect a representative sample that everybody follows, combined with mandating ISO 17025 lab testing. And I really do think that'll move us in a more stable direction. Thank you very much, Andrian. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Diane. That was fantastic. And we are going to move on to our next speaker, Daniel Charlong from the Standards Council of Canada. And he is going to be able to provide a little bit more of a perspective from the accrediting body side of things. So Daniel, over to you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today, this distinguished forum, and thank you, Diana, for your presentation. It was very knowledgeable, very informative. Today, I'm delighted to provide you some insights into accreditation and highlight the impact, the impactful role that the Standards Council of Canada can have in enhancing the quality of life and economic prosperity for Canadians. And it's as well, this is I'd like to welcome everybody to the workshop on world accreditation. And today we're going to explore the importance of accreditation and how it benefits the cannabis industry and its interested parties. Along the way, I may have a few little analogies to offer you, and we'll see how that goes. So the first thing I'd like to talk to you a little bit about is the Standards Council of Canada, who we are, what we do. We're a federal crown corporation. And our job is to make standards and conformity assessment life easier and safer, healthier for more and more prosperity for people and communities and businesses in Canada and around the world. We are a public trust. We build public trust by through the products and services we offer, open access to markets, and give Canadian companies a competitive edge. Many powerful tools that can help address societal challenges and emerging issues from climate change to data privacy and cybersecurity. Our role at the Standards Council is to put full power of standardization to work for all people in Canada. We bring people together and foster collaboration to drive the creation of forward-thinking standards, conformity assessment, and accreditation programs that reflect Canadian values and advance the country's priorities. We represent the Canadian interests on the world stage and as a respected voice in international standards. Everything we do is aimed at improving Canadians' futures and ensuring standardization delivers the greatest benefits for humanity. To give you an idea on the global field, on the global network, we An accredited body like the Standards Council of Canada, we operate in alignment with international standards and best practices. And furthermore, SEC actively engages with international organizations such as the International Laboratory Accreditation Corporation, ILAC, the International Accreditation Forum, IAF, excuse me, the Asia Pacific Accreditation Cooperation, APAC, and the Inter-American Accreditation Cooperation, IAAC, as well as the North American Accreditation Forum, NAAF. And through these partnerships, SEC contributes to facilitating international trade by reducing technical barriers and promoting a level playing field for businesses across borders. And this collaboration strengthens global trust and confidence in the competence and credibility of both the accreditation bodies and the accredited organizations. By adhering to international standards and participating in these esteemed organizations, SEC ensures that the accredited conformity assessment bodies meet the stringent requirements defined by in our programs and schemes, thereby addressing the concerns related to rigor, transparency, and conflict of interest. The Standards Council of Canada at SEC, we offer 11 different accreditation programs or schemes, and accreditation that will be discussed for the remainder of our time together today will be 1725, which are the general requirements for the competence of testing and calibration laboratories. In addition to this, we have what are called PSAs, and I'm going to get into a little bit of detail in a few minutes about PSAs, and that's known as a program specialty area, of which cannabis would be one. So we're looking at these very specific program specialty areas. You can see that they include agricultural inputs, food, animal health, plant protection. I noticed in one of the questions that was addressed earlier, what is the relationship between Health Canada, this Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and SEC? Well, the Standards Council of Canada and the Canadian Food Inspection Agency work very, very closely in the food safety, food testing, and food supply for all Canadians across the country. And you can also see that we're involved in a variety of other areas, including cybersecurity, privacy, etc. At SEC, excuse me, our schemes and programs and schemes and accreditation are discussed in the 1725 general requirements, and our customer focus, as you can see, we provide a personalized experience that earns high customer satisfaction. Our team offers programs of a large accreditation body with the flexibility and responsiveness of a smaller organization. We help new applicants navigate the accreditation process. We adapt to customers' business needs and cycles. We give feedback beyond evaluation to highlight areas where customers are performing well and where they have opportunities to improve beyond standards compliance. We are forward-thinking, or we have a forward-thinking approach. Accreditation and conformity assessments help remove technical barriers to trade, pave the way for companies to access new markets. Our team is actively preparing for the impacts and implications of cutting-edge technologies and trends such as cannabis, artificial intelligence, data privacy, and cybersecurity. The scope of our expertise covers the full standardization spectrum, from overseeing the development and adoption of standards and accrediting standards, developing organizations, certification and conformity assessment bodies. And this gives our accreditation services team a unique perspective and knowledge to deliver exceptional value to our customers. In terms of the quality of our work, we are respected worldwide for our high caliber team, rigorous assessments, and findings that ensure conformity and help customers continuously improve. These aspects will build on our reputation as a global leader in standardization for more than 50 years. So what is accreditation? Standardization is increasingly seen as a powerful tool for solving complex societal challenges and embracing opportunities. But what is accreditation? Well, accreditation involves the assessment of the competence and impartiality of an organization and the compliance of their work to national and internationally recognized standards and schemes. Another way of stating that is that accreditation provides independent third-party recognition that an organization has the technical competence and impartiality to perform specific activities such as certification, testing, and validation. But who can perform accreditation? Only an accreditation body like the Standards Council of Canada, CALA, A2LA are examples, can provide accreditation services. At the Standards Council of Canada, our accreditation services create a foundation of trust by checking the checkers, confirming that standards development organizations, known as SDOs, conformity assessment and certification bodies meet the requirements of national and international standards. For licensed producers in the room, as you're looking for labs that are going to test your products, you'd want to look for labs that are accredited because they've gone through the rigor of being assessed and are deemed to be competent. I've seen some questions asked about the difference between accreditation and certification, and hopefully by the end of this, you'll have an understanding that accreditation is an assessment of the competency of the laboratory operations, whereas certification really looks at the compliance to particular regulation. So if you're complying to a regulation, you're satisfied. If you're competent, you can be accredited. That's a very basic way of saying it. So quickly, what is ISO 1725? You may be familiar with the standard, and you've just seen a few bits and pieces of information from our previous presenter, Diane. So I'm going to highlight just a few of the features, and hopefully this will give you some familiarity. So for this series, you'll note that the ISO talks about ISO 17025. There was actually a series of ISO international standards called the 17,000 series. And the 17,000 series includes things such as 1711, requirements for accreditation bodies, accrediting conformity assessment bodies, requirements in 1720 looks at various types of bodies performing inspections. 1721 looks at management system bodies. 1725 is laboratories. 1734 as an example talks about general requirements. And without getting into the whole shopping list of everything here, including 1765, which is requirements for bodies certifying products, processes, and services. The scope of the 17,000 series of standards is very broad, it's very deep, and it can touch virtually every element or aspect of society, which is an area that we're talking about here today. When we look at the accreditation and what it ensures you can see this figure was taken from the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation, ILAC, website. As you can see, the number of laboratories being accredited in 1725 has increased dramatically in the last 12 years. And in 2022, it's reported that over 60,000 testing labs are accredited, and the number of labs worldwide more than doubled since 2010, indicating that there is a shift in the market towards lab accreditation. I know from experience in another standard that many years ago there was in terms of security, cybersecurity, and privacy, the European Union adapted the use of ISO 27001, an information security management system, and it posed a problem for the American market because the American market had another standard that they believed in that they followed. And now you'll see if you want to do business in the European Union, you virtually have to have accreditation or at least a certification to information security management systems in order to demonstrate your cybersecurity protocols. So that's an indication where the governments or industry leaders can enforce accreditation. So accreditation represents a third-party validation of the quality and competence of the lab and the lab personnel to produce high quality and repeatable results based on processes and carefully monitored by lab management to ensure the integrity of its results. So as referenced earlier, this implies proper sampling techniques. It implies appropriate testing procedures, validating tests and test methods, traceability and measurements to national standards, accurate recording and reporting of procedures, as well as suitable testing facilities. I'm not going to be going into great detail on all of the aspects or all the requirements of 1725 of accreditation to the standard. However, it is a management system standard that is from the International Standards Organization that is based on 9001, which is a management system standard. There are many management system standards, including the 17,000 series. There's the 14,000 series, which is environmental, which may be of interest to you. And in all of the standards, they will have clauses 4 through 10 or clauses 4 through 8, and they will all virtually look very similar to this. There will be general requirements which talk about the impartiality and confidentiality of the lab in order to perform their duties, to do the work that they do. What are the structural requirements? So how is the lab formed? What does it look like? Where is it located? What are its reporting protocols? Who's in charge? What are the resource requirements? In other words, who are the personnel? How are they trained? What are the minimum? What type of equipment minimally do they need? And are those products and services provided internally or externally? And if they are, how are they managed and controlled? All the way to the process requirements, which talks about the methods that you're going to use. Are they recognized industry standard methods? Are they methods that you need to develop on your own to meet a very specific requirement? How are you to manage technical records? How will results be reported? What will the results look like? How will they be communicated if there are complaints? Do you have a process and structure in place to manage complaints as well as any non-conforming work that you may have? And then finally, the clause 8, the management system requirements, is really the process where the management of the laboratory operations will look at on an annual basis how their lab has been operating in each one of these 4 or 5 different areas. They conduct internal audits. They have a management review. They look for opportunities for improvement. They look at corrective actions resulting from any nonconformities that they have recognized in both internal and external audits. And they do everything they can to ensure that the integrity of the operations is retained moving forward, so they can, in addition to these sections, the lab can and often add industry-specific controls and based on the business sector they operate within. And this is the purpose of the other program specialty areas as noted earlier. We're looking at performance characteristics we can include, but are not limited to accuracy, measurement range, measurement uncertainty of the results, limit of detection, limit of quantification, selectivity of the method, method linearity, I should say, repeatability and reproducibility, and robustness against external influence or cross sensitivity against interference from the matrix of the sample or test object and bias. So you can see there's quite a bit that's involved in selection, verification, and validation of methods. One of the test methods or one of the program specialty areas that we have is called test method development, non-routine testing, TMD, NRT. And this is a program specialty area where the lab can be accredited to develop their own methods. They can use retrospective methodology in terms of defining and designing those methods to use to accommodate the needs of their particular clients and customers. So there's a great deal of freedom and flexibility in this area as well. Ensuring the validity of results, again, we can see that there is a document that's referenced called the SEC Requirements and Guidance, Proficiency Testing, Laboratories Testing, Medical Testing, and Medical. This all of our programs and schemes that we offer have what's known as a requirements and guidance booklet that goes with it. And this particular requirements and guidance is multiple pages long, and it goes into great detail on how you can apply the various controls, requirements, and guidances of 1725 for your specific applications. And it has a Canadian business and environment lean to it, so it makes it much more efficient for you to implement these within the Canadian environment. And you can refer to the requirements and guidance. You can see at the bottom of this slide here at the website by looking for ILAC P9. ILAC policy for participation and proficiency testing activities is another example of some of the controls and requirements that we follow and we request that our labs follow as well. So we're talking about scope of accreditation. What is the scope of accreditation? It's really just a statement to the public that says, if you bring your products or services to our lab, this is what we can test against, and this is what we're accredited to test against. So it defines the specific types of tests that you will use, the methodologies that we'll use, and it will also go to the extent of any analytes that will be assessed during that process. Two key purposes of the, as it's noted on the bottom, is to really define specific accredited areas of laboratory activities and provides users with a clear idea of covered calibrations.
Just going to jump in here for a second in the interest of time and just to make sure that we kind of stay on track with the webinar. I'm going to ask if you could wrap up in the next couple of minutes. It'll give our other presenters enough time for their presentations as well.
Thank you. I'll go through quickly some of the stages. Where am I here? If you want to learn more about 1725, you can visit our learning center. We have a learning center which offers training. You can become a 5-day session on how to understand and read and interpret 1725. And you can see there's sessions offered in both languages. I'm blasting through this to help you stay on time. As you can see, there are multiple steps to accreditation. They can take anywhere from a well-organized and the laboratory can be fully accredited within a period of months. And for those not so well organized, it can get into several months or into years. So how much does accreditation cost? Well, it's really dependent on the schemes that you select, the number of methods you have in place, how many locations you want accredited, and the size and complexity of your organization. So the cost can vary. However, it's like everything else. You get what you pay for. And I can give you an example of that in the questions a little bit later. How long does it take for a lab or your organization to become accredited? Again, I've just talked about that. If you're well organized, it can happen quickly. If you're not well organized and you haven't used consultations and you haven't caused or created a champion within your organization, it can take significantly longer. If you want more information about accreditation, please feel free to contact accreditation@sec.ca or contact my counterpart Vivek Golasingham. As you can see, his email address is here. I'm sorry if my presentation is a little bit blocky today, but Vivek was supposed to do this presentation and due to personal reasons, he had to move out of it. So I picked up this little role about an hour or two ago. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Daniel, and thank you for stepping in, as you said, for Vivek on such short notice. So we did have a little bit of change in our lineup of presenters today. To keep things rolling, I'm going to hand it over to Emma Gitej from CALA to kind of continue on presenting from the perspective of an accrediting body. Emma, take it away.
Excellent. Okay. Gonna try to, can you see my screen okay, Adrian?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule today to participate in this webinar, and thank you to C45 for putting it together. As Adrian mentioned, my name is Emma Gitej, and I'm the Business Development, Marketing, and Communication Manager here at CALA. And today I would like to introduce you CALA's accreditation program for the cannabis industry. So just briefly about CALA. CALA is a Canadian not-for-profit accreditation body providing highest quality accreditation services to testing and calibration laboratories. We believe that good data is the heart of every good decision. Our mission is to ensure that people and organizations such as yourself can trust the data they use to make the best decisions. Our values are based on integrity, competence, competitive collaboration, and leadership. CALA, at its origin in 1989, was known as KEAL and was established to help Canadian laboratories conform to the internationally accepted ISO/IEC 17025 standard. KEAL became independent and recognized by APAC and ILAC in 2005, followed by a welcomed name change in 2007. It is worth mentioning that CALA participated in the ISO CASCO working group to review and revise the 2005 version of the standard prior to its release in 2017. So CALA offers accreditation and training on subjects related to laboratory accreditation and laboratory management. This can be viewed at CALA's website at that Training My Shopify collection of courses. One of the webinars this month that might be of interest to you is called Testing by Cannabis Laboratory, exploring the tests and respective analytical processes for cannabis testing under the Canadian cannabis regulations. Similar to SCC, CALA is signatory to the ILAC and Asian Pacific Regional Mutual Recognition Arrangement. Hence, CALA accredited laboratories enjoy international recognition of their test results. The global landscape highlights the hierarchy for regional cooperation bodies and accrediting bodies under the ILAC. The ISO list on the side includes some of the standards that are applicable for today's presentation. CALA fields of accreditation include environmental, food, cannabis, petroleum, mineral, occupational hygiene. Currently, we have 215 laboratories accredited, out of which 8 perform testing for cannabis. Now let's continue exploring the ISO IEC 17025 accreditation for testing laboratories and the benefits for licensed producers. So Daniel already touched bases on the definitions. I will just highlight that accreditation is the basis of that independent third-party assessment by qualified accreditation bodies such as CALA. Similarly, you have had all the wonderful benefits of accreditation, such as mitigating risk, best practice, confidence in the data, continual improvement, stakeholder communication, better use of resources. But how do all this come to be? I'll take a dive in and highlight a few of the clauses that help you as a licensed producers understand these benefits. So as Daniel showed you, the structure of the standards has specific requirements defined to cover all laboratory activities. If implemented by the testing lab, the application of the standard will deliver that confidence in data for decision-making, as it covers requirements for staff, equipment, quality procedures, and test methods. Briefly, accreditation bodies assessing competence to Section 5, 6, 7 structural, resource, and process requirement will assess that the lab has organization and management document control quality person responsible for the quality management. Furthermore, the lab has a process for review of requests, tender, and contracts in order to meet the customer requirements. The lab is also responsible for managing subcontracting, as the lab remains responsible for the quality of these results. These sections lay the foundation for a laboratory's quality management system covering various essential elements necessary to ensure competence, consistency, and reliability in testing and calibration activities. Today, we're going to explore Clause 7.8 reporting results and how the standard requirements, if implemented and adhered by the testing lab, helps you and the QAPs at your organization make the critical decision on the result, such as releasing lots. This clause requires laboratories to have a procedure for generating and review of final reports being issued to customers to ensure accuracy and completeness. That results are provided accurately, clearly, unambiguously, and objectively, and that report format and delivery is in accordance with the customer's needs. Here, I just wanted to bring to your attention on how requirements under ISO IEC 17025, Clause 7.8, reporting of results is far more rigorous than the Health Canada Cannabis Act reporting requirements. As you can see, it's all in the fine details. To name a few of the examples on the requirements, is the name and address of the laboratory is required on Health Canada Act. However, laboratories could have multiple facility locations, which need to be identified on the report as well as on their scope of testing. Similarly, around date requirements, when investigating results, you can easily trace the timelines from collection to reporting if all the dates are included: the date of receipt, the performance of tests, the issue of the report. Any details on sampling, especially if a sampling plan was used by the lab, comments on sample integrity, and statement to the effect that the results relate to the items tested. When it comes to the test method, it is critical to note if deviations or exclusion from the test methods have taken place, as this will impact the results. It is not sufficient to include the date of the last method validation. Most importantly, the lab identifies when results are from an external provider, such as subcontracted results. These requirements are assessed by assessors at the time of assessments and provide you with that confidence in the results. Furthermore, Clause 7.8 reporting of results includes requirements on opinions and interpretations. They must be offered only by personnel qualified and authorized to do so. Statements of conformity are based on decision rules that were communicated and agreed to by the customer. Amendments or corrections are clearly identified. Clause 7.9 specifies the requirements on complaints. Laboratories need to be responsive to customer feedbacks and complaint, and therefore have a process in place. They need to have a documented process to manage these complaints. Complaints need to be assessed and processed in a professional manner, and outcomes communicated to the complainant. Clause 7.10 specifies the requirements of non-conforming work. This can be non-conforming work to laboratories' own procedures or performance criteria or agreed requirements of the customers. Example of internal non-conformances can be attributed to failure to meet their own QC limits, equipment of specifications or failure, methods not followed, failed proficiency testing. Examples of external non-conformances are not meeting detection limits required by customers or regulatory requirements, wrong methods used. Just briefly touching on Clause 8.7, corrective actions requirements are that the laboratories provide a structured response to nonconformities. These responses reflect the magnitude of risk of nonconformity. Corrective actions are extremely important as they minimize the release of bad data, ensure root cause analysis and action plan implementation to prevent reoccurrence, and ultimately retain trust and reputation with customer. What does the program deliver? So KLA's accreditation program delivers formal recognition of competence through biannual on-site assessment by trained and qualified assessors, successful participation in proficiency testing to ensure laboratory performance is acceptable based on a comparison to their peer testing the same sample and responding to nonconformities following the assessment. The laboratories benefit from the accreditation process. It gives them a competitive advantage that shows customers that they are committed to the highest standard, investing in their responsibilities, striving to provide reliable test results, hence investing in their reputation. Laboratories are provided a full detailed report of findings, which provides the lab the opportunity for continuous improvement. The accreditation process includes a flow of preparation of documents, application into the CAM system, scheduling of assessments, completing the assessment on site, providing laboratories with the assessment report. Post-assessment, laboratories are given an opportunity to provide responses and objective evidence to nonconformances, followed by CALA review and evaluation prior to granting accreditation. This process is repeated biannually. New labs are assessed annually for the first 3 years, and surveillance responses are required annually, as well as ongoing proficiency testing participation. So CALA accreditation fees are publicly available on the CALA website. There you'll also find a directory of accredited laboratories and their scope of accreditation, clearly listing the information around their testing capabilities for each test method. To recap, the importance of accreditation, it enhances credibility and confidence in test results. It increases regulatory compliance and reduces risk of legal action, and it facilitates international trade by adhering to a recognized international standard for laboratory competence. Some of the feedback that we hear following the assessment is that assessments were very well organized, very little disruption to laboratory activities. Our assessors are great to work with. The lab benefits from the assessors' technical capabilities to bring to light nonconformances. Preference is always to on-site assessments. When labs improve their compliance to the standard, it ultimately enhances the service and deliverables that they provide to their clients. Thank you for your time, and I hope that the glance into Kayla's accreditation program and the ISO/IEC 17025 standard requirements allow you to keep quality at the forefront of all of your activities. Any questions, feel free to contact us at communications@kayla.ca. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emma. That was great. And we've had a couple of different perspectives so far, and we are going to hand over the floor to Dr. Hussein El Aribi, who is going to kind of share more from a lab perspective. So, Hussein?
Can you, I cannot because the video has been stopped by you, so.
I'll put that back on.
Okay.
Great. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Beautiful. So I guess I have only 2 or 3 minutes left, isn't it? So I'm going to do.
We're going to give you a little bit more time, and it will cut down our Q&A time a little bit, but we appreciate you trying to keep to the scheduled 10 minutes or so. But you have more than 2 minutes.
Great. Good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be part of this event. I'd like to start by thanking Adrian and Tom for organizing this important webinar and inviting me to share really some of my 5 years experience working in the cannabis industry. Thank you also all for attending this wonderful webinar. Just a little bit, until November 2nd of this year, I was the Senior Director of Valence Lab, where I have spent a wonderful 5 years, during which I have led the lab to its first ISO 17025 accreditation. And I have also validated the 330 pesticide method for international export. For almost 3 years, Valence Lab was the only lab in Canada offered that test. I have reduced the number of slides really so I can keep up. So I don't have anything to introduce. So, I mean, I'm going to dig right into it. After 3 wonderful presentations during which really each presenter has highlighted the importance of lab, accreditation in general, I'm going to focus, during this presentation, mostly on the cannabis-based food testing that is currently really facing a lot of challenges in this industry. Now, we have spent a lot of time the last 5 years developing, validating, improving the testing method for cannabis flowers and cannabis in extracts in particular. It's still very challenging, but it is not even close to what labs are now facing when dealing with the testing edibles with so many varieties of product. There is a need of constantly changing and improving the expectation of the analytical, method. So it is incredibly challenging with the number of product that we are seeing now in the market. So I'm going to highlight a little bit of challenges in a few minutes. So if you would really just, to give you a slight example, what we are dealing with, just a couple examples when we are analyzing edible samples, the extraction procedure can go really from 2 steps to multiple steps, really dependent on the matrix. So in general, it takes a lot of really, steps to extract efficiently, really whether it's a cannabinoid from the edibles samples. Now, in general, testing food and beverages for contaminants such as pesticides, mycotoxins, heavy metals, etc., is regulated, standardized, and well established for many, many years right now. There is still challenges when testing really all this product, but again, really when dealing with the a food-based cannabis food-based product, it's even more challenging. Some of the challenges in testing cannabis food product is the sample preparation and the extraction complexity. the composition of those products, which generally contain sugars, fat, amino acids, vitamins, hormones, additives, make the sample preparation very tedious and complex, and it can affect really the reproducibility and the production of a homogeneous and well-distributed cannabis in the food product that has shown, to be very challenging in the last, in last year that we've been spending time in it. In some viscous, products such as chocolate, gummies, brownies, certain degree of variation of cannabinoid result is inevitable. It is difficult to produce a homogeneous, sample in general. So, cannabis, combining food and beverages products with cannabis that require an accurate dosage is complex. It is complex. We have seen it, we have tried really, to analyze multiple samples coming from the same lot, and it's still really very challenging. Cannabis contain a wide range of chemicals which might contribute to their, properties. Sample taken from one part of brownie or chocolate bar might have different concentration of cannabinoid and contaminants in multiple times that we have tried that in the past. The other challenge is the analytical testing, method. Because of the nature of the matrices that we are dealing with, there is a need for using a robust instrument that can account for any interferences coming really into the the testing. Analytical columns can get really clogged easily, need time to ensure long-term stability and reproducibility of, and collect extensive data to conclude that the method that you have validated is accurate and, well suitable for testing your samples. Using the instrument that can reach, the lowest limit of detection is also very important. It is very important, specifically in the eatables where the concentration of cannabinoid is quite very, very low. Reporting is also variable, from one product to another one, from one client to another one. Is it in milligram per gram? Is it in milligram per serving? Is it in milligram per piece, of product? So many questions comes into mind as well to get really an accurate result. What is the weight of the serving? How consistent is the preparation of those servings are? So a lot of question comes into discussion when dealing with the cannabis food-based product. Variation of TIC and CBD potential levels is inevitable really in a cannabis food-based product. The potency is not always consistent from one harvest batch to another harvest batch. The potency of the oil produced can be different. You can take for granted that adding the same amount of oil will result in the same amount of TIC and CBD in each product. It's, it is really a big issue in this industry. So low limit of quantification is also required. Sensitivity of those instruments is very, very important. And therefore really, it's important to look into labs and make sure really that they are using the best equipment available in there. So one of the other things, the long-term stability studies for those edibles samples are being overlooked. Edibles can lose the potency over time if they are not stored properly. So again, colleagues have, I think Diane has already really, talked about standardized, regulation and standardized, testing method. A laboratory, may be accredited for cannabinoid testing in cannabis, flower, and oil samples, for example. But that doesn't mean that lab is suitable also really to be accredited in, to test samples such as chocolate, gummies, brownies, etc. So it is test specific, but also it's matrix specific, because there is a huge difference, you know, when dealing with different matrices. PT sample, as Diane has already mentioned, are very important. Test result can, you know, that are outside tolerance limit, you know, are captured. There is those programs documented and can be viewed sometimes as inaccurate. So accredited lab can lose their accreditation if 2 consecutive PT results are found unacceptable. A lot of need to be done, you know, in this industry to ensure that manufacturing and labeling of cannabis food product, you know, is as consistent as other really legalized products such as alcohol and tobacco. So we have a lot to do. So, I mean, again, I don't want to repeat exactly what my colleague, you know, my other presenters have said, but accreditation is so important in any industry. In my last 5 years, I find this very important in cannabis industry as well. One of the things that can take care of is the instrumentation that is used really in your lab, whether it's for pesticide and mycotoxins, for cannabinoid, for terpenes, for microbial, for moisture content, you know, it doesn't matter. So there are so many varieties of instrumentation is there. So the choice of the state-of-art instrumentation are needed in cannabis industry, specifically when dealing with the, you know, cannabis-based food products where, you know, a low limit of quantification is really needed. Staffing, training, competencies in in people analyzing your samples are also viewed and checked during the accreditation by, you know, the officer. So it is very important. The other very important things is the expectation on the method, you know, of testing. Ideally, when validating a method with a matrix, you know, we are expecting really, you know, a good linearity for calibration curve, a good really accuracy, and a good precision with really good RSDs. So in this table, I'm showing really how ideal a method, you know, not should be, but, you know, can be in some times. But that's really when you get this kind of result, you feel very confident really the method that you are using to analyze the samples is really as good as can be. Unfortunately, when validating or even verifying, you know, methods to analyze cannabis-based food product, we are facing a lot of challenges. Whether during the extraction, the cleanup, the separation, the detection, identification, and quantification. There is always many questions and many concerns that comes along with, you know, with it's really during, you know, each phase of this extraction. So collecting a lot of data to make sure really that the method, you know, used is efficient, is, you know, accurate is very important. So it is, you know, it's not always the case, you know, that's, you know, you get, you know, a perfect method to use for any test / matrix as well, which is very important. Accreditation officers will review those data, make sure really your sample are analyzed the best way possible using well-optimized method, well-optimized, whether it's analytical or microbial method. And that has to go for every single method, you know, used to analyze your sample, whether it's pesticide, cannabinoid, terpenes, residual solvent, heavy metals, you know, aflatoxins, mycotoxins, and, you know, microbial testing. So every single test used to analyze your sample has to be well optimized, verified, validated, and, you know, the accreditation officers will make sure really that any method that is used to analyze your sample is, you know, is properly validated. So I don't want to repeat exactly what, you know, my other presenters have said, But one of the things to note is actually it is accreditation of a lab is even more important when a problem arises and fast and accurate results are required. Most important one is that testing method applied routinely in the lab have to be validated fast, accurate, and fit for purpose. That is very important. Fast results are very important, but we still really high level reliability of the result are very important. So yes, there is a lot of benefits really of using an accredited lab. And again, I don't want to repeat everything that my other presenters have said. So I just want to note really that in any industry, there is always problems that happen, and sometimes fast and reliable answers are expected, and to have those fast and accurate results, you need to choose an accredited lab. Thank you very much for attending, and for, and if there is any question, please, email me, call me. I'm available, or really let's discuss it during this this final thought of this presentation and this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hussein, and thank you to all of the other speakers that shared, I think, lots of great information. In terms of just the timing, we'll take just a quick check-in with all of the presenters. Would you be able to stay an extra 5-10 minutes for questions if we have enough to kind of get through?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
I think we've got the thumbs up from everybody. That's fantastic. So we can look over our kind of Q&A chat. There's a couple of things that came up there, and there were also a number of questions that people submitted when they were registering. So Tom and I can go through both of those and kind of get things started.
That's great, Adrian. I do have one question actually that came to my mind. It's been on my mind for a while, even before this this presentation. And before I do, I just want to thank all our presenters again, and for sharing all that information, and the audience for sticking around. So it's clear, based on my experience working with labs, working in the industry as a QAP, seeing all the information presented, that there are really real benefits to having your lab be ISO accredited. And yet we see in today's industry that there are no requirements for labs to be accredited. And the C45 Association has actually co-signed a letter, I believe, with the SEC and CALA recently to support or to kind of encourage Health Canada to somehow either formally or informally support labs for getting achieving accreditation. And I guess the question that I have for the panel is, why haven't we seen Health Canada require this accreditation when it is so common in other industries, where we just see that they're just kind of interested in security and general record keeping? They'll issue someone a license to test for cannabis in Canada if they have cameras in a safe, and they can kind of have some security. Where is the gap here? What are we missing, and what can we do as an industry to encourage this? Because I think it's going to be a good thing. So kind of a broad question for anyone that wants to answer.
I can respond to that quickly. Daniel here, can you still hear me okay?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that you see that is that most government agencies, all government agencies, tend to be reactive. They're not proactive, and they're not going to just because they feel like it's a good idea, create a standard and impose it on industry and industry business sectors. What will have to happen from this sector, the cannabis sector, just like any other sector in the economy, is that it would have to be a ground up swell. So it would have to be organizations such as yourselves, other organizations, to present valid and viable reasons why a standard is necessary, what components the standard will take into consideration, how the standard will overlay, who it will apply to, when it will apply to. Personally, I'm involved with a number of technical committees that are looking at standards development right now. There are a number of standards development organizations. And those are the kind of individuals and groups that you need to be in communication with to have them begin the process of developing a standard that goes through. And it can take a couple of years or more to get a standard created because it requires that you define all of the intimate details and intricate details of what the standard is attempting to do, who it impacts, when it impacts them, costs associated with it, and what any of the repercussions may be for those that don't follow the standard. So it's if you want a standard in the cannabis industry, it's going to be the result of the cannabis industry lobbying for that to occur. It will never occur just because the government of Canada says we want to. Health Canada established regulations that are never going to create a standard unless you decide them to.
Thanks, Daniel. So that's based on your experience from just looking at other industries and how that came to be in the environmental and medical fields?
That's based on my experience of over 30 years of accreditation and certification audits, as well as standards development operations and activities that I do. As I've mentioned, I'm currently involved in 6 different technical committees at the national and international level, looking at cybersecurity, privacy, as an example, healthcare. These are all areas where standards are being developed. One example is artificial intelligence. So here's a standard that's being developed, and it's just asking the questions: what is artificial intelligence? Who does it impact? How does it impact them? And what are the precautions and safety measures that we need to put in place around the development of the standard?
Thanks, Daniel. Does anyone else want to chime in, or should we try a few more questions? Adrian, is there any that you see from our audience?
I've actually amalgamated a couple of the questions together, and I know the focus of today's talk was certainly around ISO 17025 and the laboratory component. I think just for general interest, what are some other ISO standards that are applicable to the cannabis industry? Somebody specifically asked about ISO 9001. I'll kind of leave it to the panel to interpret that as you'd like.
So I guess I could take that. So with the 9001 specifically looks only at the management system, right? ISO 17025 look at the competence of the testing laboratory. It does provide an option under the management system requirements to use the 9001. So if a facility is 9001 accredited, they could definitely use that as to meet the requirements of 17025. But again, it's looking 17025 accreditation looks at the entire competence of laboratories, not just the management systems.
Or just to kind of follow up on that, are there any other, I guess, ISO standards that would be applicable beyond 17025 and 9001 to the cannabis industry?
Yeah, I could think of Daniel here. I can think of multiple standards that would apply. I mean, what you're talking about, ISO 17025 is a management system standard, just like 27001 and multiple other management system standards. They're all based on 9001. So if you're talking about environmental issues, you could look at ISO 14001. 14001 really talks about, let me see here. It talks about the environmental management that exists to help organizations minimize how their operation negatively impacts the environment. And it's a quality management standard that relates to how a process or service is rendered versus how the product or service itself. If you're looking at an environment that's going to have a lot of public contact, then you can look at information security standards such as 27001. You can look at privacy standards such as 27701. There's multiple standards that you can overlay. Almost all of them would fall under management system standards similar to 9001. And it would be dependent on the organization, on the lab, the size, the complexity, of which standards you would choose.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to jump in?
Let's thanks, Dan. Let's maybe do one more question. Because we're kind of running into 90 minutes here. But this has been great. Adrian, any other questions that you'd like to discuss, or the panel as well, if we went touched on any specific topics? I do have one about proficiency testing. This is a topic that comes up a lot, and this was mentioned part of ISO 17025 as a requirement, and the potential implications of a lab failing it. What is the current requirement for ISO accredited 17025 accredited labs to conduct proficiency testing? I guess frequency, is it once a year, once every 2 years? And related to that, can labs do proficiency testing on their own without being accredited? And also, I guess similar to that, are those results made public? So just letting our audience know a bit more about what goes into it, how frequent it is, and what are the implications of that. If anyone can touch on that, that'd be great.
I could give it a shot there. So at Aquila, proficiency testing requirement is to participate twice a year. And the most stringent requirement is to participate with a proficiency provider that it's accredited by ISO IC 17043. Again, you have to, if the samples are not available for the specific needs, you do have alternative options in participating in interlab studies, whether they're formal or informal, down to participating in inter-analyst studies. What these results are not typically made public. They are assessed at the time of the assessment. They are a requirement of the accreditation program. And I can remember what was your other question. I think I had another thought on.
I mean, what are the implications of it, of a lab failing, but also, like, are these results made public? Will the average consumer or industry participant know that a lab has failed?
Yeah, so if a laboratory fails 2 consecutive proficiency testing rounds, the analytes from the specific test methods are suspended, and these are publicly made available on the accreditation body's directory. And if the 3rd proficiency testing result is also a fail, that analyte will be withdrawn, at which time the lab will have to go through a full process of application and to reinstate that specific analyte or the test method, as a matter of fact.
And the testing is matrix or sample specific, right? So it's twice a year for dried cannabis and maybe extracts, or is
correct. Yeah, so I think what's important, and I think we sort of I know Daniel highlighted a little bit on the scope of accreditation. Scope of accreditation specifically details the matrices, sub-matrices that the lab is accredited for. The accreditation requirement is to participate in proficiency testing for all the matrices, sub-matrices specifically, that are listed on your accredited scope. So therefore they will be again shared publicly, not necessarily as they are going through it, but as a final outcome, whether an analyte is still accredited and in good standings.
Thanks so much. Dan, I noticed you had your mic unmuted. Do you want to add to anything to that?
I was just going to add that the Standards Council of Canada, not dissimilar to CALA or other accreditation bodies, we have some minimum requirements. So at the absolute minimum, proficiency testing must be completed annually. And many labs, depending on the methods they have in scope, whether they're in-house developed or they're externally provided, you'll generally see most labs will do proficiency testing on a quarterly to a semi-annual basis. And that just gives a higher degree of assurance. And similar to CALA, if there are major nonconformities because of failed proficiency testing, then it could be the suspension of the methods that are in scope until proficiency testing has been confirmed. Or if it's serious enough, then it could be the suspension of the accreditation altogether. So proficiency testing is incredibly important in the laboratory environment because it ensures the competency of the technicians doing the work, and it also ensures the integrity of the conclusions and the results being presented to the end customer.
And I think part of your question, Tom, was whether a lab, if it's not accredited, can still participate in proficiency testing. And absolutely, that's one way of demonstrating, again, what Daniel just highlighted. Proficiency Testing Canada and other testing providers provide various test groups that labs, whether they're accredited or not, can register and participate, similar with formal and informal proficiency testing studies.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you everyone for that. Adrian, thank you for organizing this wonderful panel. Diane, Emma, Hussein, and Daniel, thank you for all the information. And to all of you listening, we had you know, a lot of people online. And just a reminder, we are going to post this publicly, this recording on our YouTube channel in the coming days. So please keep an eye out for that. Please also check our website out. We're going to have another quality time, kind of informal, ask me anything discussion in December, and then we're going to take a little break for the holidays and be back at it in mid to late January with an event every month. And also please keep an eye out for any announcements for any summits. So again, thank you all for supporting what we do. Yeah, stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time. Okay, take care, everyone.